For most of my life, I have watched people make one of the biggest retirement decisions of their lives with the wrong tool in their hands. They treat Social Security like a clean break, even problem. A calculator spits out a crossover age. Wait until 70 and the monthly check is bigger. Claim at 62 and the monthly check is smaller. Compare the totals, draw a neat little line through the future, and pretend that life will politely cooperate with the spreadsheet. That is not how life works. A lot of people talk about Social Security as if it were only a math contest. I understand why. Math feels objective. It gives people the illusion that there is one correct answer hiding behind enough inputs. But Social Security is not just a math problem. It is a timing problem, a health problem, a tax problem, a marriage problem, a market problem, and for a great many people, a survival problem. I sat with an old friend recently who had just turned 61. He had his statement spread out in front of him like it was a medical chart. He had spent decades doing physical work. His knees had the look of machinery that still functions but no longer forgives misuse. He looked at me and said, "The government keeps telling me to wait until 70 for a bigger check. But by 70, I may not even be able to climb into the kind of life I am trying to fund." That is the part the calculator never sees. The software sees a larger monthly benefit. It does not see your back when you get out of bed. It does not know your family history. It does not know whether the next 7 or 8 years are likely to be your healthiest retirement years or the first stage of decline. It does not know whether your spouse depends on the shape of your benefit after you are gone. It does not know whether the stock market just fell apart, whether your IRA withdrawals are about to create a tax torpedo, or whether you simply need the money now because life did not honor your plan. So let me tell you what I would do if I were teaching someone to make this decision properly. I would start by admitting something that most financial television and most online calculators work very hard to hide. Filing at 62 is not automatically foolish. Waiting until 70 is not automatically intelligent. The right move depends on the actual structure of your life. And if you ignore that, you can make a mathematically elegant decision that serves the wrong human being. Now, let us get the arithmetic out of the way because the arithmetic does matter for most people in the younger retirement cohorts. Full retirement age is 67. Claim at 62 and you generally take about a 30% permanent reduction from that full benefit. If your full benefit at 67 would have been roughly $3,200 a month, claiming at 62 might bring it down to around $2,200. Wait until 70 and the number may rise closer to $4,000. That sounds decisive until you ask the only question that matters. Decisive for whom? If you were guaranteed to live well into your 80s or 90s, if your health were strong, if your spouse had a similar benefit, if your portfolio could comfortably fund the years before 70, and if tax complications were not part of the picture, then yes. Delaying can be very attractive. The larger check compounds through cost of living adjustments. The higher base creates more inflation protection later. In a vacuum, waiting is often powerful. But people do not retire in vacuums. They retire inside bodies, marriages, tax returns, market cycles, and family histories. That is why I want to walk through the legitimate reasons a person may choose 62 and be entirely rational in doing so. The first is health, and I wish people felt less awkward saying it. If your family tends to die early, if you already have a serious medical history, if your energy and physical capacity are visibly narrowing, then pretending you will be an average longevity case can become a very expensive act of denial. Social Security is not a trophy for patience. It is an income stream you paid into for decades. If you have good reason to believe the back half of the curve is not going to look like the actuarial tables, then claiming early may not be pessimism. It may be realism. People hate confronting this because it feels like surrender. It is not surrender, it is refusing to optimize for a version of the future that may never arrive. If your father died at 73, your grandfather at 71, and your own doctor keeps using phrases that are not especially reassuring. Then the break. Even charts should not bully you into behaving like a healthy statistic. The second reason is one that many neat, tidy planners dismiss as emotional, when in fact it is perfectly rational. You may want the money while you can still use it. Retirement spending is not flat. People like to pretend it is. It is not the early years when people are healthy enough to travel, move, renovate, visit grandchildren, take road trips, and say yes to life are different from the later years when money shifts from experiences toward comfort, care, and limitation. I have watched enough people save brilliantly for ages 72 through 85 only to discover that their body had other plans. Money at 63 is not the same thing as money at 79. Even if the nominal amount is identical, the utility is different because the life receiving it is different. If the years between 62 and 70 are likely to be your true go years, then a smaller check during those years may actually buy more life than a larger check later. A calculator cannot see that, but you can. The third reason involves spouses, and this is where a lot of people make the decision as though they live alone when they do not. If your spouse has a much smaller Social Security benefit or very little benefit at all, your filing decision may unlock spousal benefits earlier. A household that looks weaker on one spreadsheet can look much stronger once you stop treating the higher earner and lower earner as separate planets. For some couples, filing at 62 is not mainly about the claimant. It is about opening an income stream for the household sooner. Too many people do retirement planning, like undergraduates solving a problem set. They isolate variables that are not isolated in real life. In real life, one spouse files and the whole household changes. The income arrives into one kitchen, one utility bill, one shared future. The fourth reason is one of the most important and one of the least discussed. If your spouse is the higher earner and their health is poor, or if they have a serious diagnosis that materially shortens the odds, filing early on your own record can be one of the smartest choices available. Why? Because if you start your own benefit at 62, you can collect that benefit while your spouse is alive. If your higher earning spouse then dies, you may step up to their larger survivor benefit. In plain English, you collect something now and potentially switch to something larger later, in that very specific circumstance. Waiting on your own smaller benefit can be one of the dumbest forms of false discipline. The person following generic delay advice in that case can leave a very large amount of money entirely uncollected. That is why I always tell people the first error in retirement planning is assuming the generic answer is neutral. It is not neutral. It is merely generic. The fifth reason has nothing to do with your body and everything to do with the market. If the stock market is down sharply and you are relying on withdrawals, filing for Social Security at 62 can act like a shock absorber. This matters enormously because selling assets after a major decline is one of the fastest ways to wreck an otherwise decent retirement plan. If your portfolio falls 30%, 40% or more, and you are forced to keep liquidating to cover living expenses, you are cutting down the tree while hoping it will regrow at the same time. A Social Security check can slow that damage. It creates an income floor. It gives your portfolio time. It lets you avoid selling depressed assets at exactly the worst moment. And if you are in the unusual but very attractive situation where you do not need the whole check for current spending, the government is effectively handing you cash you can redirect into discounted equities when most people are terrified. That is not a reason for everyone to claim early, but it is a very real reason for some people. Markets do not care about your retirement date. If you happen to retire into terrible sequence of returns conditions, early Social Security can help you survive the part of the storm that does the most long-term damage. The sixth reason is taxes, and this is where the internet makes a mess of a very subtle subject. People love talking about the monthly check. Far fewer people talk seriously about the tax architecture around the decision. Yet in many cases, the tax consequences are what separate a decent filing strategy from a great one or a poor one. If you are in a low-income period right now, perhaps you retired, perhaps you have not begun required minimum distributions, perhaps you are living on cash or brokerage assets, then your Social Security may be taxed more lightly if you claim earlier during that lower income window. There is another side to this as well. If required minimum distributions are coming later and they are going to force substantial taxable income out of your traditional accounts, there are years when it may make sense to start Social Security earlier or to coordinate the claiming decision with Roth conversions, IRA withdrawals, and bracket management. The point is not that 62 is always the tax answer. The point is that the tax answer exists, and it is often not the same as the monthly check answer. People who reduce Social Security to bigger later versus smaller sooner are leaving one of the most valuable parts of the analysis untouched. Taxes turn a simple looking decision into a strategic one. The seventh reason is the most basic, and the one people are strangely embarrassed to admit. You need the money. There is a kind of financial snobbery that creeps into retirement discussions as if everyone who claims at 62 did something wrong, failed to save enough, or lacks discipline. That is nonsense. Sometimes the roof leaks, sometimes the business failed, sometimes the pension is smaller than expected. Sometimes a layoff came before the perfect plan was built. Sometimes life is expensive and your balance sheet is not what the retirement books wanted it to be. Social Security is insurance. It is a safety net. It is not a morality test. If the income is what allows you to avoid debt, avoid liquidating at the wrong time, or preserve a smaller nest egg that would otherwise be damaged, then using the system when it first becomes available is not a personal flaw. It may simply be the financially responsible move in a constrained world. Now, once you understand those 7 reasons, you may be tempted to think, I am making a pro-62 argument. I am not. I am making an anti-laziness argument. There are many situations where waiting absolutely makes more sense. If you are healthy, have longevity in the family, have a spouse who may outlive you and depend on your survivor benefit, have enough resources to cover the gap years comfortably, and are in a position where the larger inflation-adjusted check at 70 meaningfully strengthens the rest of your life, then delaying can be excellent. It may be the best decision on the board, but that is not the same as saying it is always the best decision. One of the dirtiest little secrets in this whole conversation is that the financial planning industry itself has a structural bias toward telling people to wait. If an advisor manages your investment assets and charges fees based on the size of those assets, then one of the advisor's favorite outcomes is that your portfolio remains large for as long as possible. Delaying Social Security often makes that easier because it encourages drawing less from other sources early or preserving a larger managed base. I am not saying every advisor is malicious. I am saying incentives are real. And the first duty of an investor is to understand the incentives of the person giving the advice. Another thing most people fail to do is stress. Test the life expectancy assumption. They run one version of the model, often based on an average number they found online, and then act as though the answer is stable. It has not changed the life expectancy assumption by 3 years, sometimes by even less. And the optimal filing age can swing meaningfully. That should tell you something important. If a tiny shift in the assumption changes the answer, then your confidence should be lower, not higher. A rational person does not become dogmatic when the model is fragile. A rational person becomes cautious about pretending there is one perfect answer. I would also urge every married couple to stop analyzing Social Security in isolation. The proper unit of analysis is not you. It is the household spousal benefits matter, survivor benefits matter, income sequencing matters, tax sequencing matters. If you model only one life when the consequences span 2 lives, you are not doing retirement planning. You are doing arithmetic with missing people, and there is something else hidden underneath all of this. A lot of the people who claim early are not making a mistake. They are reacting against the simple fact that waiting is a gamble too. The financial world presents waiting as caution and claiming early as impatience. That is a false dichotomy. Waiting is a gamble on longevity, health, policy stability, and life circumstances. Claiming early is a gamble on opportunity cost, reduced base benefits, and foregone delayed credits. Both are bets. The question is, which risks are most dangerous in your case? If I had to put this into one sentence, it would be this. The right Social Security decision is not the age that looks best in the average case. It is the age that best fits the actual risks in your life. If your body is questionable, if your spouse relationship changes the cash flow picture, if a market crash makes guaranteed income more valuable, if a tax window exists now that may disappear later, or if you simply need the money to protect the rest of your finances, then filing at 62 can be wise. If those things do not apply and longevity, health, and spousal protection point the other way, then waiting can be just as wise. But never let somebody sell you the fairy tale that there is one answer for everybody. There is not. There is only the answer that matches your health, your household, your tax picture, your portfolio risk, and your life. And that is exactly why so many people get this wrong. They are not bad at math. They are asking a human question with a generic formula. Generic formulas are useful servants and dangerous masters. Use them to begin. Never use them to decide for you.